No, good for you. Good for you. Oh, good for you, Sarah Jane Smith. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about School Reunion, written by Toby Whitehouse in his first script for the series, and is directed by James Hawes, which is actually his last story in the series, oddly enough. And this story is most known to Doctor Who fans for one element. I was trying to say two, really. It brings back loved fan favourite companion Sarah Jane Smith, played by the fantastic, the one, the only Elizabeth Slayton. And with it, she also brings back K9, continuing on from the continuity of the Five Doctors, which in and of itself continued the continuity of K9 and Company. So again, it's something you can't deny. K9 and Company is canon, and there's nothing you can say about it. Hooray! This was just such. That's all I'm going to talk about. It's just they brought Elizabeth Sladen back. This is the first proper connection that we've had to the classic series. Sure, we've had the Daleks. We've seen the head of a classic Cyberman, but this is the first time that we've had a character and events mentioned from the classic series stating it's like, yes, because when the series came back in 2005, it was still up in the air, surprisingly, on whether the show was a continuation from the classic series or whether it was a reboot. Christopher Eccleston, to some people, would have been the first Doctor. How mental is that? But Elizabeth Slayton here basically tells everybody, yes, this is connected to the classic series. This is the same Doctor travelling now with Rose, who once travelled with Sarah Jane back in the 1970s or 1980s, depending on what your opinions are on the unit controversy, dating controversy. That's a whole topic for another video. And just wow, just absolutely. Let's just talk about Elizabeth Sladen for a sec. You wouldn't expect her to be this. She looks very good for her older age, and she did a fantastic job at bringing back all the emotion and capability of the character, all of the dynamic. And this story also tackles the complicated relationship of the Doctor and his companions when he leaves them, when they're gone. What happens to life after travels with the Doctor? Fun fact, this story was actually supposed to be part of a series that Russell T Davies had been trying to get the series back in 2001, but Elizabeth Sladen actually turned down Russell T Davies in believing that she would have had a very small, if minor, role. And it was not until when she was asked to come back in School Reunion and she noticed that she had a much bigger role did she accept. The story also had a variety of different scripts in the production. Originally, the story was supposed to be set in a military base, but Russell T Davies didn't like this aspect, and he asked Toby Whitehouse to write a new script centered around a school. At one point, it was supposed to be that Sarah Jane is a recovering alcoholic, but that element of the story was removed by the request of Elizabeth Sladen. So this story had like a lot of things going for it. I also forgot to mention Tardisode 3 as well, the prequel, the small little prequel that aired prior to this story to set it up. That's another thing we're going to be talking about in this story. That was written by Gareth Roberts and directed by Ashley Way. But yeah, and also the fact that K9 is back. His role is very minor here, but the fact they have the same a very similar model, and they brought John Leeson back to voice K9. You just can tell that Russell T Davies and David Tennant especially, loved this story. In fact, one of my favourite quotes from David Tennant as a person is that he said something along the line of, growing up, I enjoyed knowing Sarah Jane. As an adult, I have the privilege of knowing Elizabeth Sladen. What a man. just something about this dynamic really works. But does the story hold up? Does this narrative continue on in a great way? Does it give Elizabeth Sladen, who just does absolute best, there's no hiding it, there's no me teasing it, but does the story give her justice? That's the big question. Before that, let's talk about Tardisode 3. Not really, again, I mean, these were only, this one was only 50 seconds long, and it just shows Mickey Smith on the school pewter researching events of UFOs and thinking he's basically gone crazy or something until his account has been blocked by Torchwood, implying that he is getting close to something that's really alien related, something to do with the school. And so he rings up Rose and Slayton, it's like, you and the doctor deal with this kind of stuff, I've basically got something here for you. And that leads into, of course, school reunion. This one is okay. It's a nice little setup, a nice little teaser again for the stories. I always like these Tardisodes. They're a nice little flavour. They get you in the atmosphere, in the mood, and the feeling of the story. But in terms of like information, you can easily skip this. There's a scene in the actual story that's very similar to it, and all the information that we get, where that Mickey discovered all this UFO, the fact that Torchwood has blocked him, and that's the reason why they're investigating. That's all in the story itself. So rewatching this with Tardisode is basically a little bit redundant in a sense. So it's disappointing. Ashley Way does a nice little job here, as he always does. Ashley Way's an okay director. Again, it's only 50 seconds long, so you can't really show off much directing style, but it exists. The Tardisodes exist. But anyway, we actually start off the story, school reunion, pretty strongly, as we have the teacher, the headmaster, what's his name? Finch, I believe his name is. He's heading to his office when suddenly he notices a little girl waiting by his head office, and she basically states that no, she's an orphan and she was sent here because there's nobody here to pick her up, and she's like, I see why the nurse brought you here, and he takes her to his office where it's revealed then, you can see in the small door window that he turns into a bat. Basically, he ate the child. This story starts with a child, nonetheless, a school child being eaten. For kids, a family show. Before we get into a classroom where the new supply teacher has just entered. Somebody who's wearing Converse shoes and a nice tidy suit and speaking glasses and gelled up, fliked up hair. Yes, the doctor is a school teacher. Which then leads into our credits. Now, this is a great way of setting up the story. We get introduced to a villain, showing his mess about eating children. We see that the doctor has investigated and taken the disguise of a school teacher, and this element becomes a big plot in the adventure of him being this teacher and investigating what's going on. And it's just a very nice rounded story in a sense. in the classroom, the doctor is teaching physics. In a very, one of his most iconic bits, he just constantly says physics, 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 physics. I hope you're writing all this down. Anyway, and then he asks these questions where this one boy, Milo, he answers all of these questions with the doctor. He always the one putting his hand up, and he is super smart. He is vastly intelligent, to the point where the doctors are constantly questioning him, and he's getting all of these really complicated questions right, including when the doctor asks him, "How do you travel faster than light?" Which, if you don't know, in the real world, you physically cannot travel the speed of light unless you're in a fictional universe like Doctor Who, Star Trek, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you name it. And the fact that this kid got it right, or at least right in the Who-niverse, basically implies that his brain has been massed out to a mass capacity. There's also a deleted scene, which I don't think has actually been revealed. It's on the TARDIS wiki, in which it turns out Milo suffers a seizure, and he gets eaten away by one of the nurses, and then, which explains why later on in the story, one of the teachers says, "Milo has failed me, so you, this other character, you will become my new head pupil. Don't let me down." But that was all deleted out anyway. There's this character, a young boy, I don't think he's ever named. I think his name was Kenny or Kane or something beginning with a K. And he has a sort of sub-role in this. He appears throughout the story, but he's not like a main character. He doesn't get much of a dialogue or much of a personality or character, which is strange because there's a lot of deleted scenes with him playing a much more prominent role. We see him get bullied. We see him tell doctors stuff about bats and what they're sensitive to. But in the story, he has hardly a presence, and you could have easily forgotten that he was there, despite him being prominent in a few scenes. I kind of understand why they've done this, because of the later character to be introduced. It's a bit jam-packed, and this is only one episode long. And the doctor meets up with Rose, who is disguised herself as a dinner lady. All the other dinner ladies have been replaced by these really strange women. One of them gets this oil on her and it starts burning her skin, and so all the other dinner ladies take her away and seemingly burn her, but the other women don't seem that concerned, apart from Rose, who tries calling an ambulance, but one of the women ensures her that she's completely fine. She usually gets like this, so don't worry, don't mind. And clearly it seems like every teacher is out to get them. It's also clear that Finch brings down everybody into a meeting of sorts. We get some really fun lines of the doctor interacting with one of the teachers who's been there for a while, and he states that when Finch came around, he replaced most of, if not all, the math teachers with these really strange people, and you, he replaced everybody with those strange people except for you. Your case was very strange. The woman who you replaced won the lottery, which is very strange because she never played. She had her lottery ticket delivered. Now this was a really funny joke at the time. It clicked with me a while ago that it was implying that the doctor looked up the lottery, he went back in time and he gave the teacher so we can get a door into the school. So that's a pretty funny little nod. But it's here that we get that scene in which the doctor turns around as Finch introduces everybody to a journalist who is writing a paper around the school, and specifically the headmaster. Miss Sarah Jane Smith. And the doc, it just warms your heart up. It must have felt like heaven to all those people who grew up with Sarah Jane as during the 70s, now seeing her reprise her role. And Elizabeth Slayton, she seems like she hardly has aged in a sense, and she really gave us this new bombastic, a new sort of life to Sarah Jane. She's clearly a lot older than her previous appearances, despite her last appearance in Doctor Who being the Five Doctors, and her last regular appearance being in The Hand of Fear. She has also made appearances in Downtime, the straight-to-video film, which we've tackled, and she's also appeared in 2 series of the Sarah Jane Smith audio adventures for Big Finish Productions, which I haven't not tackled because I've heard that they're really, really bad. But they have the villain return from the robot, so that one sounds interesting. But yeah, that's what I've heard about those adventures. So Elizabeth Slayton, she hasn't been dormant as most people would seem to expect, but it's just so. And David Tennant, because let's not forget that David Tennant is not only, the actor playing the Doctor, but he is a Doctor Who fan. He was one of the first actors who grew up on the show, and not grew up on the show, but was obsessed, as I stated in my Christmas Invasion video, or at least I think I did. David Tennant actually begun his acting career in the hopes that he will be in Doctor Who one day. That was his dream. That was his main goal, and he actually fulfilled it, which is just so bizarre. And his face when he sees Sarah Jane for the first time, he's just so like, it's like there's a little bit of sadness in him, but mostly joy and that melancholy about him, and how he's just meeting this really old friend who doesn't recognise him, but he's just so chuffed that she is out and about, she's lively, she's still active despite being many years later. And, his face sums it up. And I am genuinely believe that was not acting. That was David Tennant's real reaction to seeing Elizabeth Sladen come back for the role. That must have been one hell of a day at the studio. So the Doctor says goodbye to saying that he is John Smith, and there's a great moment where Sarah Jane is like, I used to know someone who used to go by the name John Smith. It's a very common name. Well, he was a very uncommon man. And then we cut into a scene in which everybody of the heroes' sides tries to break into the school at night to figure out what's going on. As the Doctor, Rose and Mickey separate, Sarah Jane Smith is actually trying to break into school, into the headmaster's office, but she gets startled when she hears the sounds of giant bats, and so she runs into the gym hall and locks herself in a cupboard, in a storage room, where she turns around and her face is frozen with shock as she notices a giant blue police box. And she's just complete silence, just like in awe. She just closes the door behind her, walks back. The camera spins around her as David Tennant's just standing there. Now, James Hawes, as I've stated in my previous videos, I don't think he's very good at directing lighter scenes. I feel like when he's directing scenes set in daytime, in bright time, and his story has a lot of bright time scenery, that he does, at best, an average job. And for the majority of the time, I think that argument still holds up. But he is at his best when he is set in the dark with some really powerful lighting. This scene with the lighting in this scene, the darkness in this scene, it's just so goddamn awesome. It feels almost dreamlike of these characters who haven't seen each other, and only now are they clicking, at least Sarah Jane is now clicking, John Smith, he is the Doctor. And she's just like, you look amazing, you've regenerated, and there's a really nice moment. I love how still the Doctor is at first, as if he kind of understands that this is a massive shock for her, and there's a little bit of sadness as well. He's like, he kind of feels bad for like not saying who she is, like who he was at first. Sorry about that, I don't know if you caught that. And then David Tennant gets a little bit more bubbly in a sense as he starts talking, until Sarah Jane basically starts almost tearing up as she is basically realizes, as like, hold on, I left you so that you would go to Gallifrey, and now I waited for you and you never returned. And the Doctor goes back to his more still persona as he states that I survived, but nobody else did. They all died. All the Time Lords died. And it's just so, you know, it's just, it brings a tear to your eye. It really just brings a tear to your eye as they hear a scream coming around and they go chasing after it. And here is we get our first interaction between Sarah Jane and Rose Tyler. Now, the aspects between Elizabeth Slayton, Sarah Jane and the 10th Doctor work every single time, and I just, you know, I absolutely love it. Sarah Jane and Rose, specifically from the Rose aspect, I love Billie Piper in it. She can play this character till until hell freezes over, but Rose as a character, she has a very negative reaction to the Doctor's friend Sarah Jane, and I understand. Don't get me wrong, I understand it. You know, she is a bit shocked. She's a bit surprised by the fact that the Doctor has had previous people that he's travelled with. Sarah Jane quotes her once saying that. Quotes her and saying it's like, you're his new companion, and she's like, I'm not a companion, and all that. But Rose's attitude, she takes it, I think, way too much. And I don't know if it's the writing or whether it was, I don't want to say Billie Piper's fault or Russell T Davis's fault, or I don't know who to blame, but Rose Tyler seems really, really defensive about the fact that Sarah Jane is here. The dynamic starts off a bit, confrontational. Then we get this really arrogant scene in which Rose seemingly is bragging by the fact that the Doctor's not mentioned Sarah Jane once. As if to like publicly humiliate the Doctor for putting her in this situation. And she even, at one point, she even says to Sarah Jane that, where are you from, the Dark Ages? And luckily, though, this gets resolved pretty quickly, but this aspect of the story just really, I mean, it does work later on down the line, but for the moment, when we see Rose instantly take a massive dislike to Sarah Jane. Mind you, Rose Tyler's supposed to be the audience's point of view character for the viewing audience, especially for children, and she takes this instant dislike to Sarah Jane. What is that supposed to tell children? You know, what was that supposed to lead into to a younger audience? Do you get what I'm saying? there's even a line in which Mickey Smith is like, he jokes to the doctor and it's like, oh, the missus and the ex, welcome to every man's worst nightmare, as the doctor pulls this really like serious face. Let's talk about Mickey for a second, because Noel Clarke does a fantastic job of playing the character. He's a little less bumbly than he was in the last series. It seems like what I really like about Mickey is that he started off as a pure comic relief character, and slowly he becomes more mature every time we see him. It's not like we see the development through some of the stories, but each time, because of his experience in the last adventures, he gets more and more mature. So I've started to like Mickey, and he kind of understands where he is and where his role is in the universe. In fact, he was the one who called up the Doctor and Rose to investigate. You know, he's like, right, this fight needs to be fought, and the Doctor, this guy with an absolute massive brain and knows all about aliens and stuff, he's our best chance at fighting all of these monsters. So, and Rose is obviously his connection, but his relationship between them is so odd, because it's like he's clearly like in some sort of relationship with Rose, but he also kind of knows that Rose is fascinated with the Doctor, and he's kind of accepted that. He's basically the boyfriend whose girlfriend goes around a lot, if you get what I might drift. But he doesn't mind, because sometimes she'll come back and sometimes she'll get the comfort. Like, he's like, if you look at him in one way, he's hanging around with his ex, but they haven't like officially. Like, I don't know, I don't understand the dynamic here. Like, what we're supposed to feel with Mickey, Russell T Davies and Toby Whitehouse? What is the dynamic here? It's also, you know, like I stated in Boomtown, there was a whole dynamic, the whole thing where Rose is like, Mickey deserves something better. But now we have another full story with them together, and that never gets brought up. The relationship is still as the same as it was in Aliens of London and World War III. It's very, very bizarre. But during their investigations, there's this really great moment, or at least it gets better, where Rose Tyler and Sarah Jane are working on some computers, and Sarah Jane's trying to comfort Rose. It's like, I'm not trying to like step in anyone's shoes. I don't want to come back travelling, if that's what you're thinking. But Rose really just goes out. It's like, what were you doing then with all your coming saying to the Doctor with your puppy dog eyes and sad and all that? Like, what were you doing? And the Doctor and Rose and the Sarah Jane basically have this argument. It's like, oh yeah, I'm tougher than you. I can tougher than you. I fought robot mummies. Yeah, well, I fought Slovene. I fought Daleks. Ha! Meant the Emperor. Real life Loch Ness monster. Seriously. Love that moment, and it's a great little acknowledgement to the classic series in a way that doesn't bog down the story. And when the girls basically, it's like, right, okay, we're arguing about the Doctor. Do they start then warming up to each other? And this is the bits then which I do really start to like this story a lot, as they joke around and they actually compare like the similarities between each Doctors. I think it was Rose, the one who says, when he explains things like 1,000 miles per hour, and when you don't understand, he looks at you as if he's been sick on his shirt. And then they start giggling about all these little habits that the Doctor has, like stroking the TARDIS. And then the Doctor walks in, and when he's trying to get to the thing, they're just laughing their heads off. Fun fact, the laugh that they are doing in this story is genuine. When they filmed that scene, David Tennant walked in with a fake mustache on, and that's why, if you watch it, Billy Piper points to David Tennant's face. that's why. And to know that is just absolutely brilliant, absolutely hilarious. And Sarah Jane is like, hold on, could help you with analysing some of the oil that these giant bat creatures in the school are contained. She takes the crew to her car and reintroduces K9! Oh yes, the lovable dog who has been basically neglected, as Sarah Jane basically can't take him to any sort of scientist or mechanic, as you know, the stuff in his machinery could advance human intelligence by thousands upon thousands of years, so she couldn't get him to fixed, and so K9 was just left basically to rust, and one day he just broke down and stopped working. It does beg the question why she was just carrying K9 in her car this entire time. Like, what was she expecting? Like, she didn't know that the doctor was going to be here when she was investigating the school. So why did she have K9? Bit of a plot hole there, but I'll allow it because it leads earlier into K9 being introduced. And the doctor goes to a cafe then, where we get one of the most strongest scenes in the series, where the doctor basically explains his philosophy on his companions. Sarah Jane and him have a discussion, and she's like, did I do anything wrong? Because I waited for you, but you never came back for me. All those times that you visited Earth, like last Christmas, I saw that big alien ship over the sky. I bet he was there, but you never came back for me. It's almost like you abandoned me. And the doctor's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't come back. There's too much pain there. And then later on, after the doctor gets K9 to scan the oil, revealing that this is crinitane oil, and revealing that they are crinitanes, this race that take physical aspects from the people that they've conquered, and that's why the doctor has said he's encountered them before, but he didn't recognize them because they look like giant bats now. When he first met them, or at least the last time he met them, they just looked like people with very long necks. I thought that this was a reference to a classic story when I first watched this, and that the crinitanes were a recurring monster. I just wasn't introduced. Maybe they were like a first Doctor or seventh Doctor villain, but no, this is one of those like off-screen adventures that gets mentioned. So it doesn't bog down the story a lot. It just means that the Doctor has encountered these creatures before. And then we get into a scene in which Rose tackles the Doctor about his relationship with Sarah Jane, and she's like, now this is really seeing the future. When you're tired of us, when you're bored of us, you just leave us, you just abandon us, and you just go off traveling. And the Doctor explains, it's like, well, he's thousands upon thousands of Earth. He doesn't age, he regenerates. And then he states, like, you might live your entire life with me, but I cannot live my entire life with you. People wither and they die. Do you know how heartbreaking that is to watch that over and over and over again? That's why I abandon my companions. That's why I never return. Because the pain of seeing all my friends grow up to their death, see all my friends die, is just too painful for one person to go through. This is such a great, powerful scene, but it would be disingenuous to mention that only a handful of companions actually were abandoned by the Doctor. One being Susan, who the Doctor left or to abandon on Earth so that she could become her own woman. One then is Sarah Jane, in a sense, but she was kind of leaving, and then we had this really heartwarming debate in a way, And the third one was actually Adam, who he chucked off the TARDIS for bad behaviour. Every other companion in the series either left due to their own admission. They wanted to leave. They either wanted to leave the TARDIS and stay there, or they found another life for themselves, or they died, like Adric did in things. So that argument, if you think about it too hard, doesn't really work, but it's still a great and impactful scene, and it still brings up the... I mean, even when his companions wanted to leave, it still doesn't answer the question why he doesn't meet up from them time to time. Why not, when he's in the future, does he go, we can catch up with Nessa, or go into ancient Scotland and let's go meet up with Jamie McCrinnan. That's it's a big question. Why doesn't the Doctor just constantly re-meet his companions again? He might do in spin-off media and stories that not get told, but in terms of television anyway, we'd never see that. And this is actually the first time. Actually, it just occurred to me, this is the first time a companion has been brought back, if you don't count Harry Sullivan appearing in the android invasion. Yeah, see, I remember these things. Funny enough, that also starred Sarah Jane Smith as well. So we get some really great impactful scenes. One of my favourite scenes is actually the swimming pool scene, as the Doctor confronts Finch, who basically goes into this detail. He tells the Doctor about the Time Lords and how they've died, and then the Doctor says like this, I used to have so much mercy. You get one warning, and if I don't like it, I will stop it. David Tennant's on a bloody roll here. I think he gave his performance here a boost up to what he usually does, because he was in the presence of one of his TV idols. Like, that must have been really tense for him. Like, no pressure. I just realised I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to skip a lot of the elements I wanted to talk about, like the villain, and skip really into the ending, in which into the reveal of the monster's plan. And basically they are planning on hacking this code, the universal code, the God maker, as the Doctor explains it. And essentially what this is this giant code, and if you solve it, the reality itself is yours to make as you wish. So time locks are nothing. You can go back and forth in time, you can change history, and with no side effects. Basically, you are God. And Finch then returns and is like, imagine all this power, imagine all this great intelligence, all this power. We may have the power, but you, Doctor, you can give us wisdom. You can bring back Gallifrey. You can save all the Time Lords. You can bring back everyone. And I absolutely love, because this is something we rarely see the Doctor in this position. Because usually when somebody tries to bribe the Doctor, it instantly fails, because, the Doctor's our heroic hero. But here, he's actually tempted. Like, the first thing he says is, I could bring them all back. Which I like to think that he doesn't just mean the Time Lords, he means everyone. And Finch also is like, you, Sarah Jane, you could live forever. You could travel with the Doctor for as long as you want. In fact, all of your companions, you can bring all of their companions back and let them live with you for all this time, which is a huge impact because we had those earlier scenes. Until Sarah Jane basically stands forth and it goes, no, Doctor, we need our pain and loss. Whether it's planets or relationships, they define us as much as love and happiness. And the Doctor then is hell-bent on stopping it. As he throws, in a fit of anger, throws a chair into the screen. and he tells Mickey to get the school kids out because they've been using their brains and their creativity to break this code. And I absolutely love that Mickey just has to pull the switch to save the day. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And we get a hot scene where he's evacuating everybody, and the Doctor, Sarah Jane, K9, Mickey, and Rose, they've been running around from the school. Oh, they also got that boy who I mentioned, who I don't know the name is. He's also there. The school aspect is very underutilized in my opinion. The school pupils don't get a lot to do in terms of the plot, really. Anyway, and K9 Mark III sacrifices himself to explode the crinitane oil over all the crinates, killing them all, as the Doctor, Sarah Jane, Rose and Mickey escape. We get a great moment in which all the kids are like, "Hooray, school has exploded! No more school! Woohoo!" Sarah Jane watches on in tears as her friend K9 had to die for their survival, even though, you know, it's just a robot dog. She still had this massive connection towards him, which then leads into our final scene in which the Doctor invites Sarah Jane into the TARDIS, and she looks around, she sees it's been redecorated. I absolutely love, because I was her in this situation where she looks around and she goes, "I prefer that as it was, but you know, this is nice." I like that. I really like that because it reminds me of a thing. And the Doctor actually offers to travel with us again, but Sarah Jane turns him down. Until Mickey then basically asks the Doctor, can he go with them, putting himself as a companion of the 10th Doctor, making him one of the few characters who's had a few stories prior to becoming a full companion. The closest we've had is Nessa, who technically wasn't a companion in The Keep of Traken, but in her very next story, she was then an official companion. But this is where we've had a few gaps before Mickey has finally become a companion. This is his companion introduction story. I hate Rose's reaction to this, as if, like, you know, she wanted this massive adventure all to herself, and is annoyed by the fact that Mickey wants to join. Rose is just a selfish little prick. And then the Doctor and Sarah Jane go outside. I love Murray Gold's music here. If you listen carefully, it is actually a slower rendition of the Song of 10. I don't know why that choice was made, but I'm so glad it does. And the Doctor hugs Sarah Jane, says his goodbyes, and the TARDIS dematerializes, and Sarah turns around to finally witness the TARDIS disappearing for the final time. And the Doctor has left her a nice little surprise, as a new model of K9 has been brought out, as Sarah Jane and a new K9 go off in their own adventures. Prior to this story's release, there was rumours that the BBC was planning on a spin-off with Sarah Jane, and right after this story, soon after this story, it was announced that the spin-off, the Sarah Jane Adventures, was in the works. It would come after Torchwood, but a Sarah Jane spin-off series was in development, and so hooray! This is a backdoor pilot, shall we say, to the Sarah Jane Adventures. So that's really awesome that we finally got that. So there you go, that school reunion. Overall, it has so much going for it. We've got great characters. We've got Sarah Jane returning. We have great villains. We have great scenery. We have great moments. We have great those scenes of melancholy, and the development and the ideas that the story tackles with about the companions, and what happens when they leave, and what happens when the Doctor returns, and why does the Doctor leave them. And there's so much great about this story. I just wished it was 2 parts long. This story had a lot of other elements which aren't badly developed, but they do get a sort of background compared to all the stuff that it wants to focus with. And to be fair, the stuff it's focusing is not only interesting, but the stuff that should be focused forward, like, you know, Sarah Jane and all that. But the school stuff kind of takes a backdrop, and some elements of it don't get that much of it, like the whole God code thing, despite it being their whole plan and stuff, only really gets a scene of explaining, and comes way too near the end to make that much of an impact of what this actual thing is. It's more of the impact of what this means to the Doctor and to our companions, and that it really takes the effect. Yeah, go watch School Reunion. It's fantastic. It's probably one of the better stories of series 2. And if you want to see Sarah Jane, David Tennant just nerding out, just watch this story. So there you go. That's the School Reunion and Tardisode 3. So join me next time, where a young little girl starts seeing the Doctor in her bedroom as she gets scanned by clockwork droids throughout her entire timeline. Might she be someone important? Let's find out in the next story as we tackle Tardisode 4, The Girl in the Fireplace, and Pompadour, I believe it is called. So join me next time on Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!